welcome to today's session. We will record this and have it available if you want to share it with clients or colleagues or friends. I am honored to be here with my friend at 3i around channel building essentials and what you need to be successful in the channel. And I'll just tell a quick story about Conor, because we met several years ago when I was first starting my company and I was teaching a CompTIA class. And I said, I will definitely do that class because it's in Battle Creek, Michigan, about 45 minutes away from my, at the time, 98 or 99-year-old grandmother. And I rented this red Mustang. Remember that, Conor? And I took her for, I got to take her for a ride in the red Mustang through the McDonald's because she loved McDonald's French fries. So
I did not get a ride in the red Mustang though, Theresa. I'm still a little bit.
Next time I'll take you in the red Mustang that I rented. So anyway, that is how I will forever remember you, Conor. So I'm excited to do this with you today. And Conor is a big music, gardening. He has tons of interesting hobbies. So let's ask him those along the way. And Jason Turner, who is going to be taking a new position as a channel chief very shortly, if not already. He won't be able to announce it today, but he is our, we're going to call him our token channel chief, right, Conor? So yeah. He's going to give the real world perspective on, building channels. And he's done a number of these from scratch. And what's your favorite hobby, Jason Turner?
Actually, I'm going to change mine from what I originally told you. So I'm glad you asked. Road cycling, not mountain biking like Conor. True cycling is probably my favorite. Although being in Chicago, it's tough to get out as much as I'd like. At least that's the excuse that I use.
That's the excuse. I know you both are very avid cyclists, so hopefully some of you are that as well. All right, well, Conor, anything else you want to say to open up?
No, we're good. Thanks for doing this with us today, Theresa. I think this is going to be fun.
Awesome. All right, well, let's dive in. Let's talk about what you need to be successful in channel. I would absolutely tell you we've been running this play with clients now for the last 5 years, and we absolutely have gotten this to a science of what works and what doesn't work. So let's talk about why channel in the first place, right? Partners and this notion of a partner ecosystem are more critical than ever. Maybe not channel in the traditional way that we talk about it, but partnering overall. 85% of IT products and services are still procured through partners in the United States of America. 95% are still purchased and interacted with channels outside of the United States of America. So this is the way business is done around the world. We leverage partnerships to get scale, to get reach as vendors. The power shift is moving away from the vendor to the partners and the customers. This is another thing that many vendors don't understand, but this whole COVID environment created the notion of the influencer, and influencers are touching customers and they're the last mile to the customer and they're the trusted advisor, not necessarily the vendor. So a lot has changed in this, and oftentimes I think vendors have to catch up to these shifts. Complementary skill sets, right? We only have a point product as a vendor, some of our clients, and they need to be part of a whole solution because customers no longer buy products, they buy solutions, they buy business challenges, answers to their business challenges. And the customer experience, it's all about customer experience. 95% of vendors and partners now compete on their customer experience, not on the products and services alone that they sell. So good. With that, what do you do, Conor, when I'm building a channel? What do I do first? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think maybe I'll start with what not to do. I think when you think about channel, there's a lot of focus that goes into signing partners. I got to sign partners. I got to sign partners. I got to sign partners. And that, that's something that isn't easy, right? It takes a lot of work. It takes effort. However, you really have to think about this as, how do I activate partners? I really need to think in terms of a broader perspective. And when you go into channel, you got to look at that as a multi-year type of play, right? It's not something that you're going to turn on overnight. Right. And so we see a lot of focus on just signing up anybody versus really understanding, like, I would get my own house in order first, right? I need to understand that I have define your selling motion, understand your target customer profile, standardize pricing. You want to think about how you can scale through the channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what I'd add to that too is, when you think about signing partners is really easy. I'll never forget, I actually went to a company. It was a startup, and there was one of the MBOs I had was to sign up 10 partners.
Oh.
I said, wow, it was like 50% of my compensation. So this is the easiest job ever. I can sign 10 partners in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's signing the right partners that's much more difficult, and activating those. So when you think about where do I start and how do I do that, I think there's two things. One, it's taking the time to think about what does an ideal partner profile look like, and that's something that I know Conor and Theresa talk about quite a bit. But how do you hone in that partner profile? Like, where do I start? And I think a lot of those partners tend to be like boutique partners, or specialized groups within these larger partners. Anyways, a great way to get to some of those partners is to start to think about who are the ecosystem, or what's the ecosystem around my solution? What are the other vendors that are complementary? And start to build relationships with their channel folks,
Mm-hmm.
And share ideas.
That's becoming much more popular. I think it's a great strategy.
Yeah, you have to think that for most vendors out there, unless you're Cisco or Microsoft or something really core, right? You're complementing something bigger. And there's a lot of focus on me in the channel. My product is great. My thing is great. It is, and it very well may be, and that's part of the equation, but it's also about trying to figure out, how can you be in service of what the partner is going to market with, and part of that broader solution, and be aware of that, right? And you can use that, as Jason said, to leverage those strategic partnerships.
Awesome. Good. So this is critical, right? Good. Let's jump into, Conor, what do you think if you decide you want to be in channel, you decide this is something you want to go after? What I often see is people go, okay, now I'm going to build a PRM, or okay, now I'm going to go hire a person, So what do they have to be thinking about much more holistically?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, we at 3i, we've spent a lot of time on high growth, emerging, and I say mid-market vendors, and helping them build and grow their channel. So we've certainly seen, all shapes and sizes of understanding of what investment looks like, right? I think there's a lot of vendors whose channel programs evolved out of customer demand. I want to purchase your product through this particular partner. All of a sudden, you've got a channel, you've got a sales guy who might now be pulling double duty as a channel. You don't have dedicated headcount. You haven't thought through, how does this align with our overall corporate objectives and our strategy? And that's where we see things, we run into trouble areas there. So just if I had to offer anything, if I look at our collective performance of our vendor stack, and we just looked at this for 22 planning, we looked at compound annual growth rate over the last 4 years. And if I look at the vendors that have checked all these boxes that we've got on the screen here, I won't read them to you. Those vendors are growing 4 or 5x more rapidly. And I know that that's not just the case with their business with 3i, but it's in the broader market as well. Than the vendors that, haven't made the investments. But that goes back to the point that we mentioned earlier of long game, aligned strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would add on this page that is kind of implied, but it's really important to think about your presence strategy within the partner community. That's kind of your shelf space at a grocery store. You need to be there. You need to be on the shelf for somebody to buy your product. And that means you need to be active at the partners. And, investment is really a vehicle to get, to drive that presence. And you can use all these to help you with your strategy to be present in your partner community.
Well, and it's interesting. I have talked to several folks who are taking new channel chief positions and going into new positions. And one of the things I always say is you have to get a budget, right? Because it's not enough to go, okay, great, I got this channel job. You have to have the budget. And frankly, in an ideal world, you have all of the authority, right, Jason, to make the decisions around these things, because you have to know sometimes it's about people, sometimes it's about incentives. You have to be able to make the puts and takes of where you want to make that investment.
Yeah, I kind of have an example of that. So the company
Great.
I was at previously, I can share the name freely, NetMotion, they were private equity owned previously. And the prior private equity completely gutted the channel, right? They think it's an easy way to save costs, pick up margin. They can sell it direct to the customer. So they had made 20% of their business at the time was going through channel because it had to. We had a new private equity firm come in, Carlisle. They were big on channel, big on growth, new executive team, and said, we really want to rebuild the channel. Part of that interview process, when I talked to them, one of the things I said, is everyone 100% bought into channel? Channel isn't, to me, like channel isn't a job or a team, it's a company, right? You have to be a channel company and have channel focus. I can't stress that enough. And, over those 5 years at NetMotion, we went from 7% year-on-year growth to 35% year-on-year growth, and 95% of our business was through channel. But we had to go back to a lot of those partners and rebuild relationships. I think this is true in a lot of scenarios, but it's especially true in channel. What's the saying? Good news travels slowly, bad news travels very quickly. Right. I tell you, like these reps, if it's like you burn one rep one time, even slightly, and you'll hear the story for the next decade. It's pretty amazing.
It is absolutely the way it goes. And so, we just finished a session earlier today around that topic, which is around the direct, indirect, hybrid channel strategy. That's a whole topic in itself that we can tackle. And I see that I have that creepy face on when when you freeze up. So okay, hopefully I should be back now. Good. All right. So let's talk about now. I have decided I need to build a channel strategy. I understand I need to own or lead with these different, I call them levers. Now, what do I do? And so, we use the 5 Ps for channel, because you have to develop the strategy and then the policies, right? Strategy, one of my mentors, and I see Jim is on here, one of our mutual mentors always said, the company strategy, then the channel strategy, then what are our channel policies, right? Are we going to be hybrid? How are we going to do business together? What are those policies? And then you have to set up processes. And then you do programs and platforms. Many people jump to program, they jump to platform, or they jump to, I'm going to hire somebody. And unless we got these other foundations, that's why we kind of call it the foundation of the house, the foundations in place, it's wobbly, right? The house isn't going to stay up. It's not going to be solid. And that's what ends up happening is the channel, 12 months later, the channel has failed. It isn't successful. So we really want to be thinking about how these things all build on each other. And then we do need to build a partner program. And why do we build a partner program in the first place? It isn't just a program for program's sake. We build a partner program to achieve scale, and we build a partner program to build what we call interorganizational trust, because programs create a way to build trust company to company. And so that's really why programs even exist in the first place, with vendors to partners. And then we do our platforms and our automation, and that probably could be a whole nother topic in itself, is what is your strategy to automate and achieve that scale? And then the people thing, and the people thing often gets underestimated, and nothing happens without the right people and the skill sets of the people. So there's definitely a science to who are the right people. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was doing an engagement with a client, and they were like, we know who we're going to hire. This is our job description of the person we're going to hire. And I said, you know what, hold on, let's go through this. And do you know where we landed was completely different than where we started on who their ideal partners were going to be. And they had a completely different skill set of what they were going to hire at the end. So being very careful to manage when you hire, and hiring the right people is also critical.
I was one note on the people thing, because I see this at so many companies. Okay. I see it's like there was a guy that was in sales. He did a lot of deals through channel, and now all of a sudden he's head of channel, or he's running channel. And it's a very different kind of viewpoint or than someone that's a strategic channel leader. So for those on the phone, if you're thinking about channel, I encourage you to either hire someone that has a strong channel background, or use consulting services of people that really do understand it top to bottom, instead of just moving a seller into that role.
Mm-hmm.
I would just echo a couple of things there. I mean, you're under the hood, your job running channels is you're doing a lot of alignment organizationally, right? You've got to get hopefully you've already set the company structure or strategy that channel is a focus. And I think to Theresa's point earlier, right? Like strategy comes before structure and before people, right? So you have to start there. But your job running channels, right, is you have to continue to advocate for the channel internally at your company. That's a big portion of.
Oh, in those first, I'm going to show you the vendor maturity. In those first few phases, it's always critical. It's as much internal selling as it is. Yes, exactly. As much internal selling in these first 3 phases as it is external, because you have to get the company activated. So we have a good question, Conor, from Frank. And Frank, I'm hoping that I'm going to pronounce your name right, Bazanta. And I'll tell you all, my elf on the shelf, my oldest son named it Bazanta. So I will forever remember you. So his question is, vendors, or maybe it's more of a comment, but I'd love your feedback. Vendors do not understand that the business partner will often take the path of least resistance. What's your reaction to that, Conor? What's your reaction to that, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying that the reseller takes the path of least resistance?
Yeah, I mean, often a reseller will take the path of least resistance.
I guess I kind of let you chime in on this, but one of the things that I always say is ease of sale is critical, and like you have to be that path of least resistance. At least in terms of, and that comes down to, how do you simplify your messaging? How do you make your product easy to sell? How do you make it easy to deal register? Just some of those basic fundamental things. If you can knock those out of the park, it almost becomes more important than quality of product. That and FaceTime, right? Are like getting in front of the reps, having the relationships, and being easy to sell. Like these guys, when you have to pick up, call a channel rep, they connect them to someone else, and it's a bunch of phone tag, that, it's hard.
That's very true.
Complexity and customization kill channel sales.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to put it simply, right? I would, a couple things. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting comment and probably a lot to unpack there. I think that there's partners take the path of least resistance, right? I think you can look at the partner community as not really a demand gen engine, but a demand net. They're great at capturing demand. I mean, partners are looking to make it easy for their customers, for the ultimate users, right, to buy technology, which I think is something that many vendors maybe devalue, right? That the importance of the infrastructure and the ease of use that partners focus on, right? Like they're trying to be an equivalent of Amazon to their customer community, to make it easy for them to buy and consume technology.
Right, absolutely. And, partners take the path of least resistance, and you might want to use partners for different things, right? You might only want partners to be referrals, and that's all they have to do is throw it into their existing sale. You might want partners to be transaction. You might want partners to be helping you expand your business or be providing services, which is going to be a big currency in the next few years for partners. So getting clarity around what you want from your partners will also drive your point, Frank.
Jason's comment earlier about the strategic alignments too, right? You have to understand probably supporting someone or part of a bigger ecosystem solution. So, if you attach well to Cisco, the path of least resistance often in a, infrastructure deal is Cisco.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can you complement? Where is your angle? Right. Those are things to think about.
Right. Those are critical things to think about, who the complementary vendors. So we'll use this as an example. And this is our vendor maturity index. And we actually have 5 stages of vendors maturity and partnering based on what this concept called partner lifetime value, which is just like customer lifetime value, except think of it on steroids. Because the partners, we did research with the University of Glasgow about 3 years ago and basically proved that tech vendors who invest in this concept called partner lifetime value, I mean, I don't invest in a transaction. I invest in partners for the duration, for the long run of how they can be successful. Those are actually the companies that are most successful in channels, most successful in driving and growing their revenues overall. Think about companies like a Microsoft at a macro level. And so there's these 5 phases of maturity based on 11 categories. And, early on, you might be very basic, you might be tactical, and then you start to mature in partnering. And, you might have a full-time channel chief, and you might have a whole team of folks in Optimize. In partner-centric, everybody in the company is aligned. There's a senior seat at the table, at the CEO table for partners. It might be via the chief revenue officer, or it might be there's increasingly the chief partner officer who is actually sitting at the CEO's table because it has become so critical in some companies for success. So this, and you can learn more about this index. You can actually take a survey and see where you are on our website. It's really important to understand where you are, because based on where you are, depends where you're going. And so that's what we want to be thinking about, is where do we need to go next and where do we need to invest? And there is a science to this now. All right, Conor, talk to us about metrics, because a lot of people don't do metrics well. So let's chat about that.
Right. We all, I feel like everybody always thinks, oh, we could do better here.
Yeah, true.
I think, you got to look at this as go back to orienting on the long game. Mm-hmm. And everybody wants to talk about revenue. It's obviously, we're going to get there, right? However, we got to think long. We got to think strategy. We got to think a couple of years, right? Commitment to growing the channel. So you got to, focus your lens there first. And if you want to go to the next slide, we can go through some of the things that you might want to look at. Jason talked about this earlier too. We talk about presence. I think early on, right? That's critical. You have to think enablement is really your focus. And, we're all going to look at revenue. We're going to look at margin by partner, those things, but you want to look at the top of the funnel activity. Some of this goes into understanding aligning this back to your customer profiles and what your selling motion looks like direct, and then figuring out how you take that into a channel model. And so you look at the top of the funnel activity that happens there and mirror that in the channel. So I won't read some of these slides, but things like, something I'll offer here, right? You want to get to know your partners. There's heat mapping, right? It's great to understand, who do you know? What is their competency? That gives you the ability to build your, we call it partner benchmarking, right? What's that ideal partner look like? And then you figure out what are those early stage enablement activities that are going to help you be relevant to their business. We've got some things listed here, and Jason, if you want to chime in from your experience.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too. And like you mentioned earlier, not every partner is good at the same things. I'll give you the real world example of this. So CDW, for instance, and I've always been in that like software side. So just for those of you on the phone that may not be in software or a hardware business, so when I reference numbers, just know that I'm speaking in software terms. But CDW, phenomenal add-on partner. Net new, not great. Their net new was 10 to 12% of their business, but they were phenomenal at going out and expanding accounts. And for a long time, we always said, how do we get CDW to be a better net new partner? But you know what I realized, I don't need CDW to be a better net new partner. I need to get them to just be the best add-on partner and expansion partner that they possibly can. And once we shifted our focus to say, how do we really go after expansion with CDW, our business grew exponentially. And then with net new partners, that's where we were getting our add-on business. And just I'll give you what we found. We found about $100,000 in ARR in the first 15 months.
Wow.
For net new partners. And the way that we did that, and again, not every partner is a strategic partner, but for strategic partners, you have to have mutually identified success criteria. And this goes back to executive alignment. It's not just the channel manager having that conversation. It's, are you aligned with the directors, the sales managers, the CEO, if it's a smaller company, and are you holding each other accountable to hitting those targets? If you can do that, you can kind of hit those numbers.
Great points. Anything else you want to add on this topic?
I think, channel doesn't exist in a silo, maybe is what you're saying, Jason, in some way. So the importance of not having a separate set of metrics for channel versus, we're running it over here, and then we've got the other company stuff that we're paying attention to over here. That's really our strategic stuff, which goes back to alignment, right? But that happens a lot. So I think you want to look at these in concert with what is my overall strategy, and these should be in support of, not something that's done as a little side project.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things, I was just having a conversation with a client, and we were talking about their goals, the CEO's goals for 2022. And we said that has to be the channel goals for 2022, right? So then those goals became, how do we support the CEO's goals in 2022? Okay, now how do we reward the partner teams for those same goals in 2022? Okay, now how do we reward the partners for those same goals, so that it's like a triangle, right? And everybody is aligned, on the Titanic, not all over the place. It's not marbles all over the floor, which is what I often see. So this is really, really important. And then picking the right metrics, right, Conor?
Absolutely.
You have to pick these metrics. Any advice on metrics that you believe are really important?
I think the ones that I think, especially in the early adoption phase with your channel, it's presence. The more you can get out in front of them. So things, you look at meetings, you look at, active positioning. I think those are important. I mean, deal registrations, right, even again, you get into that as a lagging indicator of stuff that you're doing upstream from that. So I think it's about figuring out how you can be relevant within the partners. And that's tough, right? You don't get a lot of partners that are out there going, man, come pitch me. I want new stuff to sell. There's a bias to just stagnation, right? There's not this compelling event that's saying, hey, we need to add more line, we need to add more products, we need to add more products. So you have to figure out how to make it relevant.
You have to make it relevant. I'm a big fan in those early phases in the vendor maturity index. You use 3 metrics, lagging, and obviously revenue is a lagging indicator, and 2 good leading indicators. It's very important that you pick the right leading indicators, because sometimes, a pre-sales tech certification doesn't actually predict revenue. It's not a good leading indicator. Sometimes we were working with a client and they said 95% of our POCs lead to revenue. That's your leading indicator right there. There it is. That's the one we need to measure and drive towards. So picking these is really important, and being very deliberate about getting those right.
I would add a word of caution on deal registrations, at least from incentivizing your channel team on it or calling it out too much. It is very important, but it's one of those that can be manipulated. I know early on in my career, I hired a CAM, and it was a startup type company. I said, I need you to go and get 30 deal registrations a month. Well, we got 30 deal registrations a month, but we didn't get the conversion rates that we needed to get on the pull through.
Well, Jason, that is a great point, right? I can measure deal reg. If you're measuring deal reg, on the left hand, the right hand has to measure conversion ratio. Yeah. I don't like ever measuring deal reg without the other one. That's a really good point. Good. All right. We'll keep on going. If anybody has other questions or comments, we would love to hear them. Hopefully this is helpful in giving you some best practices. I love this. Channel street knowledge, what they won't tell you. So go ahead, our token channel chief. Let's hear what you have to say on this.
Yeah, so
Terrible. I should not have said that. Disregard token. You are a superstar channel chief.
I'll go with token channel chief. Yeah. I'll try to keep this concise. I know we've talked through some of these points earlier in the slides, but I think first and foremost, to know your ecosystem partners and be part of a bigger solution. I even remind our sellers this, right? Like, it's not all about us. Get to know your resellers' business, what's important to them, what are their focuses. Like, treat them like you would a customer, right? Kind of that same mentality. The second thing I'll say, I hear a lot, like, lead gen is always key when we think of channel, and lead gen is important. Don't get me wrong, but we have to think about partners and from more than just a lead gen perspective. What I always, the term I say is, they know the customer, we know our product. Let them be an expert on the customer. Let your channel partner help you navigate and get the deals done. That's what they're most effective at. And then the other one too, like, I don't know how you feel about this. This might be kind of controversial, but the term that, like, account mapping and spreadsheets and sending stuff back and forth, to me is just, it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's not engaging. So when you're having conversations with channel, the more stories that you can tell, the more use cases that you can give and examples you can give and actually talk about deals you're working, I think that's the most beneficial. Every vendor in the world sends a list of their white space accounts and says, hey, can you get me a meeting with Coca-Cola? I think they really need my product, right? Versus kind of changing that conversation and saying, hey, we're having a lot of success in healthcare. Let me tell you about this deal we just did with Mayo. We sold 1,000 or 10,000 Apple devices. They chose I worked at Mobile Iron previously too. They chose Mobile Iron because of ABC. Here was the use case. And then they'll start to think, hey, I have other accounts that are kind of like that, right? That might be a good fit. So just when you think about channel messaging, I encourage you to think about it from that lens instead of the speeds and feeds.
Love it. I think that's a great point. Conor, anything else you want to add on that topic?
Oh man. Yeah, Theresa, you froze up on me again, but I'll keep talking.
Oh, that's so creepy.
Yeah.
Freeze face.
Yeah, Jason, you had a lot of interesting points there. I think, yes, looking at you can't look at the channel as like outsourced lead gen, and it is important, and channel can generate leads. However, I use the analogy of that you can't bring them a fishbowl full of business cards from a trade show and expect your channel partners to be your lead qualification. Like, that's not interesting to them, right? So you have to figure out where you're relevant. And to your point, I say some of the best currency you can use with partners is active deals. So we've worked with vendors to do this, and there's many vendors that have taken some of their business and moved it to channel as an investment. You could put that
especially
in the
early
on, and you're teaching your channel partners how to sell. Yeah, and you're doing it with active deals, right? Because you get a lot of these new to channel vendors and emerging channel, and they have hypothetical stories, not real use cases that you can get sink your teeth into together with the partner. So you can look at those as investments. I think that's an area that's very untapped in the vendor community. And certainly there's a resistance of like, oh, hey, we're going to take a margin cut on this. However, you have to look at this again as a longer term investment, and you have to invest, right? Channel's not going to grow on its own. And that's, I didn't say this earlier, but I mean, somewhere when you think about investments, there's a lot of, we're giving a margin. That's not enough for them to get interested. That's not. You've got to have more things that you bring to the table to partners, right? And you have to line up the full stack there. So things to think about. That's
terrific. Well, and I think the thing that I would maybe leave you with, because I know that we're at the time, is, and you can just jump to the last chart, is this is not simple things. This is really complex stuff. And so if you want to learn more, all of us have emails here. We are happy to connect with you, have a conversation, help you in any way we can. I would encourage you, we have a channel acceleration bootcamp, and it's filled with some amazing people building channels right now. And the conversations in the peer group cohort is so powerful. So I encourage you to come to the March 9th, register for that session if you're interested. Conor, anything you want to add on closing?
Yeah, just a little bit about 3i. For those of you that might not know us, we're a boutique distributor focused in a few different categories. You can see here, mobile security, cloud. Our focus from a vendor footprint is, we say emerging and mid-market, but getting your feet wet in the channel and trying to figure out how to be more successful in the channel. If you're not Cisco and you're not Microsoft, we do really well there, and we have a lot of expertise and tools and programs and people to help on your channel journey. So happy to chat if you want to learn more about us, and we're always open for a conversation.
Absolutely. And thank you, Emmanuel and Nicole and Kate, for commenting on the Channel Acceleration Bootcamp. And this will be available online on both of our websites, as well as, I believe, LinkedIn. So you will be able to listen to this, and there will be a recording if you want to forward it around. Thank you, you guys, for joining. Jason, terrific job. Conor, you're fantastic. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great holiday, and happy New Year. Here's to 2022.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Theresa.
Bye-bye.